2022. The board's meetings are now being held both in person here at the town hall and via video conference through Zoom webinar. The link to participate in this meeting via video conference can be found on the town's website at the town clerk's agendas and meetings portal. If you do not wish to join the live meeting, you can still watch the live stream video, and you can also submit written comments for the public record through the town website. The Zoom webinar is being moderated by CTV. If you are attending this meeting via Zoom and you wish to speak during the meeting, then please type in the chat box that you would like to speak and which application you are here for. So then our CTV moderator can let you in at the appropriate time. As a reminder to all applicants, agents, and members of the public who wish to speak at the meeting, please state your name and hamlet of residence for the record. Thank you. Please join together for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What is your pleasure on the minutes of August 24th?
Move that the minutes be accepted as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I would have abstained since I was.
Advisory report, Lewis Road PRD subdivision.
Good evening, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. We have received referrals from the Planning Board for the Lewis Road PRD subdivision, as well as the site plan. Just as a recollection, just to give you summation of the project, you'll see two plans before you. One is the Central Pine Barrens Commission approved plan, and this is the plan that's currently before the Planning Board. As this board likely knows, the final application is calling for 118 residential units. Those units would include 8 clubhouse condominium units, 18 village cottages, 40 separate village lots, 20 village estate lots, 32 woodland estate lots, plus an additional 12 workforce rental housing units. Other projects components, of course, include the building of a recreational complex, a fitness center, a community pool for the residents of the subdivision, a clubhouse, a private 18-hole golf course, and other accessory improvements. 72.5% of the tract would be set aside as open space, which would take in 440.66 acres. The tract, which includes various parcels, takes in 607.74 acres of land. These lands are situated in the CR 200 zoning district, the compatible growth area and core preservation area of the Central Pine Barrens Overlay District and the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. The action is classified as type 1 action pursuant to seeker. This is a project which, of course, has been before this board in its earlier stages. The project is now nearing final approval. The planning board had held a public hearing on the project last week. So the advisory comments, which are being recommended tonight, center mostly on the mechanics of project implementation, including various actions and measures that can be taken in the interest of lessening potential adverse environmental impacts. So the advisory report as drafted reads as follows. One, there is a significant amount of uncertainty as to how a project of this magnitude can be sufficiently monitored upon implementation in order to avoid inadvertent clearing or disturbance of intended protected areas. The ability of the applicant to stay true to the project goals and comply with the intricate site disturbance limits as the project proceeds has likewise been called into question. For these reasons, it is critical that the project be completed in phases, thereby lessening the level of impacts to wildlife and the Pine Barrens ecosystem to the maximum extent practicable. In that regard, the project needs to proceed in stages or nodes consistent with a pre-approved town/applicant tiered or segmented implementation schedule with reporting and verification of compliance provided to the Department of Land Management upon completion of each individual phase and prior to proceeding with undertaking the next phase. Second, phasing of the project would also provide opportunity for periodic revision or amendment of the project plans if deemed necessary in the interest of lessening environmental impacts or enhancing cost effectiveness. Factors such as changes or limitations in financial resources or investment-backed expectations may also warrant pause, including additional time needed by the applicant to generate the necessary funds and revenue to continue construction. Thirdly, there are at least 4 distinct planning and construction sectors representing different project objectives and varied ecological conditions whose infrastructure improvements should be phased in or staged separately to lessen environmental impacts and accommodate growth. The recommended phases should be treated and implemented essentially as individual development nodes scaled in proportion to the greater size and complexity of the project. 4, it's recommended that Phase 1 consist of initial building of the access road known as Eden Path, ending at Spinney Road, completion of the sewage treatment plant and workforce housing, construction of Redan Trail and the recreational/clubhouse improvements, inclusive of the swimming pool and sports courts, building of the condo units, as well as individual house lots 78 to 110, and installation of the off-site Suffolk County Water Authority well. 5, Phase 2 should consist of clearing, grading, and building of an initial 9-hole golf course, holes 1 to 9, adjacent to lots 78 to 110, inclusive of the putting green and driving range. 6, Phase 3 should consist of build-out of roads Levin Way, Cape Circle, Ritz Trail, Punch Bowl Lane, and lots 177. And 7, finally, Phase 4 should consist of construction of the second 9 holes and remaining golf course, holes 10 to 18. 8, compliance, monitoring, tracking, and recording and reporting requirements for each of the recommended phases needs to be ongoing and coordinated with the Department of Land Management, with responsibility assigned in terms of project, in terms of oversight of the project implementation schedule, monitoring, notice, and reporting, with sufficient detail to facilitate town review and determination of consistency with planning board approval and project goals and objectives. 9, the purpose of the compliance monitoring would be to gauge the project's effectiveness, to identify any activity that was not correctly implemented, to note what factors may have led to potential non-compliance, and to describe those actions, adaptive measures, or contingency plans that will be implemented to rectify the non-compliance and prevent such activity from occurring again in the future prior to proceeding with additional phases of the project. Field inspections will need to be completed by the town to verify the accuracy of the monitoring reports and data submitted. 10, the monitoring may result in changes or project amendments in terms of how the applicant moves ahead prior to commencing a latter prescribed phase of the project, including, among others, correcting errors, modifying avoidance and impact minimization measures, and changing monitoring reporting protocols. To this end, prior to commencement of the project, the applicant needs to develop and submit for town review and approval a construction phase plan, timeline, and tracking process inclusive of a spreadsheet to be updated weekly and shared with the town for monitoring project status and compliance. 11, the project plans appear to be going forward without the results of biological wildlife studies that were considered essential by the Central Pine Barrens and Joint Planning and Policy Commission, but were required to be addressed at the local level. The January 20, 2021 Commission finding statement and decision, specifically subsection 8, open space protection and natural resource conformance conditions, noted that, quote, listed plant and animal species and habitats must be protected as required by local, state, and federal agencies, end of quote. 12, in that regard, a thorough analysis of rare and uncommon wildlife to be impacted by the project was deemed vital to establishing the credibility and acceptability of the final plan. However, this information was never adequately provided. General background biological studies were submitted by the applicant as part of the subdivision and site plan applications to the planning board. However, these assessments were minimal in scope and were largely an insufficient biological basis for making findings. 13, in light of the above, it is therefore recommended that credible biological surveys and studies yet be undertaken prior to and/or upon plan approval and implementation of the project, together with oversight to ensure that the house lot, road, and golf course development do not result in inadvertent intrusion into designated protected naturally vegetated areas and/or result in undue harm to wildlife. 14, furthermore, it is ironic that many of the provisions that were discussed with the applicant during commission application review in order to minimize the impacts of golf course construction, inclusive of drainage, reserve area design, avoidance of steep slopes, and integration of golf course carriers, do not appear to have made it into the final golf course plan. These prior plan refinements were based upon existing vegetative and terrain conditions and a precise golf course hole to golf course hole, fairway green to fairway green field analysis. The changes that were subsequently made to golf course holes 2, 5, 6, 8, 13, 14, and 15, as well as proximate to the gatehouse, are particularly troubling, as these modifications will result in unnecessary damage to slopes and natural cover previously earmarked for preservation as part of the commission review. 15, additionally, the plan formally set certain parameters that would be adhered to with regards to intended rescue and salvage of rare plant populations previously documented in the proposed development area. However, no details have been provided as to how these actions will be accomplished and/or with respect to who will be given management responsibilities for ensuring rare plant preservation as much as is practicable through avoidance, transplant, or seed collection. 16, furthermore, a considerable implication for conservation management is the potential impacts of simultaneous large-scale clearing, tree and brush removal, construction noise, dust, and activity on wildlife, especially during the breeding season. Consequently, notwithstanding required adherence to state and federal northern long-eared bat restrictive windows on tree cutting and clearing, habitat removal during wildlife breeding seasons in general should be avoided. 17, as the project will have significant adverse impacts on wildlife, the landowner should commit to trapping and relocation of eastern box turtles and snakes for 5 consecutive days prior to land clearing within each sector or divided sectors of the project. 18, all lands which are proposed for protection need to be preserved in perpetuity by transfer to public ownership or by granting of easements with management responsibilities better detailed for any privately conserved lands deeded to a homeowners association. 19, intended clearing methodology needs to be detailed, including, among others, types of equipment and machinery to be utilized, staging and access areas, and provisions for stockpiling and transport off-site of tree debris and cut brush. 20, the landscape plan legends inclusive of plant locations, stock types, sizes, and spacing are not sufficiently detailed in order to allow for the proper town review and comment. And lastly, other strategies for overcoming or minimizing further long-term environmental impacts, which should be addressed beyond the initial forest and habitat loss, include management of invasive vegetation, off-road vehicle enforcement, and installation of Pine Barrens interpretive signage. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
We're sending comments on this project. Now, you did mention that there was a public hearing on the
Yes.
8th. I wasn't there, I was away. But I'm told that there was quite an outpouring of residents and that there were 40 people that attended via Zoom. They asked that the hearing not be closed, and they were also asking that a secret review be done, that the project not be reviewed separately, having the site plan reviewed and then having the subdivision reviewed separately. These need to go together, they're part of the same project, and in order to see the total effect. You do it in piecemeal, you don't see the total effect. Also, what came up, which I found very interesting, is the Zoning Board of Appeals okayed an 18-hole golf course. A building for maintenance, 2 bathrooms, maybe a pump station. I think that was it. They did not approve of a big clubhouse. They didn't approve of anything that went with the parking lot underneath, I forgot how many square feet the clubhouse is, but it's quite huge. Many of these other things that were added. Now, these amenities were part of the original application put forward by Discovery Land. It was part of a PDD. That's different from a residential project, and the PDDs don't exist anymore. So why are we sending comments on something that was brought up at that meeting and it has to be established? Is it legal? It was never approved. It's somehow nobody quite knows how all of that extra development got thrown in there. So I have a concern. I mean, I look at the recommendations to go from, maybe 11 on, And, those are valid, they can be applied to the golf course also. Also, there's things that have changed. This isn't the original application that went before the Pine Barrens. So many people are asking, we need to have another whole review and not just throw this and push this through. So I have a problem with sending these comments as there is. It's as if we're giving tacit approval to something. The golf course was approved. I don't like it, but I will live with it. It was approved and it's legal. These other things were not approved.
Well,
I have from here what was approved, but you probably know it, a copy of what the zoning board approved. These other things weren't approved and they don't belong in a residential development.
certainly the comment could be made that any approvals need to be conditioned upon getting any and all needed additional approvals from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Certainly, at the very least, that comment could be.
I know, I just feel that it's too bland. I just would like to see us take a stronger stand.
With regards to the public hearing and the public comment period, my understanding is that the public comment period is still open. And it's also my understanding that a supplemental seeker finding statement is going to be prepared. I'm not sure what the schedule for that is as far as the continued review of this project. And the project did change dramatically as compared to the original proposal that went before the town board. As part of my office's review of the commission application, I spent a very extensive amount of time on the side, working with Discovery in meetings to get modifications to the plan. And majority of those modifications were made. However, of course, the scale of this project is tremendous. And that's why my comments voice any concern about, in the event that the applicant gets the needed approvals, there is concern with regards to the applicant going ahead with simultaneously with the full extent of the project. It needs to be gradually phased in.
I'm just going to interrupt you, because that I agree with, but you probably worked on this project thinking that the clubhouse was approved, all those other amenities were approved, and you worked around that. Is that correct or no?
Well, I have not been directly involved in the planning division or planning board review of this application. As I indicated, I spent a considerable amount of time looking at the project as it relates to the Central Pine Barrens Commission standards, but I have not been involved in the day-to-day review of the application before the planning board. When it initially came in, planning division asked for me to go over the plans and identify any changes that might or might not be consistent with the commission approval. The application is back on before the Central Pine Barrens Commission next week, and that's in response to the planning board's referral to the commission. And at that time, the commission will be looking at whether or not this project, as it stands before the planning board today, is consistent or not consistent with the commission approval, and whether or not an amended commission approval is needed or reapplication to the commission is needed. So that will occur next week. So I'm not really in a position to answer your questions about whether or not certain recreational amenities that are proposed necessitate additional zoning board of appeals review. I can certainly bring those concerns to the attention of the Town Planning and Development Administrator in the Planning Division, but I'm not, unfortunately, I can't answer the question.
You wouldn't be. You would be given something, and you would be asked your opinion on what they were proposing. I am led to, to believe also that the developers have used what was approved under the PDD, the site plan there, and what was approved, even though it was ultimately rejected by the town board, they've used that to justify what they are proposing now, but it's not part of a residential development. And yes, that is not your area. You've done what you're supposed to do, and to the best of your ability, you've come up with what you think will protect the environment. And I understand that, and I respect that. What my problem is that this has not been approved. I mean, all of these amenities are not part of a residential development. They're part of a mega golf resort. And so I just do not feel that I can vote on them because they shouldn't even be there. The planning board should go back and they should really, start the application from scratch, since it's a different application. And they should look at both the site and both the subdivision together. And they should do a secret review.
Marty, can you add some comments to
Well,
that?
I don't know that this responds well to your concerns. The comment can certainly be added that clarification is needed as to whether or not the recreational amenities inclusive of the golf course and that complex necessitate zoning board of appeals review and/or potential variances. I can certainly make that comment.
Yeah, I mean,
So that the planning board is aware that this is an area of concern on part of this board.
Yeah, because it was not approved by the zoning board, and that is not part of our present zoning, that you could put anything like that in a subdivision. And remember, this is, as you brought up, probably the largest tract of land we have that is undeveloped, and it is so sensitive. And even there, you have a number of concerns of what they, are going to do, having to do with inclines, having to do what they've submitted to you, having to do with the wildlife. So that doesn't bode well for this plan for me.
Are you thinking if we placed verbiage in there in front of appropriate sections that started the sentence, if approved, this should happen?
Yeah, but
If approved,
but Marty
that should
will
happen
usually do that because we always have that caveat.
Right, if we either
to
have
protect ourselves.
in the opening, it says if any of these issues are
Yeah,
approved,
and-
that this is what
But I like it to
could
be more
done.
specific. We can
Okay.
take what the zoning board approved and track that language. I mean, I have a copy here in this mess. And say all these other things have not been approved.
Yeah.
And yet, we're being asked to make a comment on it. We also have many people that are challenging the resolution to vote on it being a complete application, and they're asking for that to be rescinded. Now, that may not be part of, what we're, supposed to bring up, but I would like something in there that these other, and even started off with, a paragraph, which you do very often, about certain properties, how sensitive and how important they are to our environment.
Okay.
And then what was approved by the zoning board is not what is, not any of these other amenities, and there's quite a bit, in there. Yeah, I'd like to see something like that. And even we like to reserve our comments on those portions until we find out whether or not this is going forward.
Yeah, because, and I can certainly start the report in that manner, highlighting the environmental sensitivity of the project and the questions that are being raised as to whether or not the the recreational amenities that you described require variances and/or further consideration by the zoning board of appeals, I can probably add language to say that you want to reserve the opportunity for full comment on this project until that needed clarification is provided. But it's without someone here tonight from the planning division to speak to the current project, what's permitted as per the town building and zoning code and what's not. It's difficult for me to write a report for this board that says that they don't have the necessary variances. Rather, my preference is that you ask for this clarification and additional information and ask that you be able to reserve further comment on the application until you get that information.
Are you under the gun with this? Do you have to have this in before next meeting?
Well, it came to us last week before the last meeting, and they wanted it by the 8th. And they were hoping, the planning board and the people pushing to try to get it closed, that it would be done then. There would have been a period for written comment, but we would have missed that. So now the hearing has been held open till the 22nd. I don't know what will happen after that.
The 22nd of September.
Of September.
Yeah, I raised the question. I had concern about that process and the timeliness of Conservation Board review and submittal of comments. And because ideally, we would have wanted to get those comments in perhaps prior to the holding of the first public hearing. But in that regard, I was advised that the timeframes in terms of public comment don't apply to this board. That even after the public comment period closes and the hearings close, this board still has the opportunity to provide comment that will be considered by the planning board before taking an action on the application. That being said, you know, in light of the process that's been described to me, I think it's essential that this board get in comments now and yet reserve the opportunity, ask to reserve the opportunity for further comment once you get some additional information. I mean, I can, you know, it's up to the board. You know, the board can consider whether or not to put this off until the next meeting and see if in the interim I can get some of the additional information to answer your questions. But I think that some of the comments which I'm recommending that the board make, such as the phasing of the project, I think could be very significant to the outcome of this project. I see, in the event that this project gets approval, I see the phasing of a project of this size as being absolutely essential to try and do everything we can to ensure that the project, once implemented, is in compliance. So if the planning board hears early on from the board about issues such as that, I think that'll at least steer some of the discussion as they go forward. You know, as indicated, I've been advised that the intent is to prepare a supplemental seeker finding statement rather than recommence the entire seeker process. But typically, you don't even necessarily have the opportunity to comment on a finding statement. That is really the final step in the decision making process. But I'm just making you aware that there will be some additional seeker.
When is the planning board meeting again? Do you know?
22nd?
22nd.
Yeah, yeah.
And the hearing is on the 22nd?
Well, there was a hearing last week, a week ago today.
But you said it's been kept open.
Yes, they wanted to close it, and they got, and from what I'm told, an outpouring of residents. I mean, the place was full, and 40 people attended via Zoom. And so they closed it, 4 to 3.
They closed it.
I'm sorry, not closed, I said, they kept it open.
They kept it open. So when
But
it...
for
when-
one more, meeting, it could be kept open again, I don't know. Or that could be it.
Does anybody know when that hearing is going to be held?
Yeah, to keep it open or closed,
Yes.
they'll vote on that probably at the next public hearing,
Which is going to be when?
the 22nd.
So do we want to get, is your recommendation that we get our comments in prior to
Well,
the
then,
22nd?
you get comments, I don't see any issue with you in your comments asking that you have the ability to reserve, additional comment on this project until you get further information. But I think it would be, helpful to you, for this board, to get some advisory comments in at this time. But that's the board's decision, if you want to.
Advisory comments?
In the event, if you want to postpone submitting comments till the next meeting, which is the 28th, my understanding is that you would still have the ability to submit those comments at that time.
But of course, it would have
I
more
mean,
impact if it was brought.
We would
to
still have the
record that we
ability to
submit
submit comments
by the
later.
time
We
they
don't
have
do it
their
now.
Actual meeting on the 22nd.
Well,
I think it's helpful for them to get some feedback prior.
Makes sense,
Public,
not
yeah.
to have-
Whether or not it's final comments or not, I think getting some feedback from this board prior to the next hearing, I think would be helpful.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and you put a lot of work into this anyway, so, I mean, we should try to give them what we can give them.
I mean, when I drafted these comments,
Can, but
I'm sorry, when I drafted these comments, I didn't even know that the hearing was going to be adjourned. My expectation was that the hearing was going to close.
That was
So this is news to me that they kept the hearing open.
Yeah.
So,
You've done a lot on this report, and it's a good report. Anna's brought up some good points, too, that I think can make the report even better. But let's keep in mind, we're giving this report to the planning board to aid them in their decision-making process. So my thinking is, if I was on that board, I'd want those comments as soon as possible. And if there are more
Yeah.
comments to come later, then do that later.
Yes.
So let's do some comments now, and as you say, reserve that, request that opportunity to follow up as conditions change on this application. We regularly give comments during the process without a complete plan that's done, because we're affecting that complete plan. So let's do that again here. Let's affect that complete plan by giving our comments to help them.
Can you be specific in terms of what Ann is bringing up about what was originally approved and what they're going ahead with now?
well, I'm just, I'm not really positioned to respond directly to those questions. But what I can do is say that this is an area of significant concern on part of the board, and the board wants clarification in this regard and additional information in this regard as to whether or not many of the planned recreational amenities necessitate additional review on part of the zoning board of appeals.
And can we make a reference to what the zoning board approved?
Yes.
Or no? Yeah, because I have a copy of it here, that the board finds the proposed 18-hole, 91-acre private golf course available only to the owners of the subdivision parcels and not to the public at large, together with the following maintenance and operating buildings and structure that accompany said golf course, as long as they do not exceed the following square footage. 1, a 4,500 square foot, one-story main floor with full basement maintenance facility. 2, a 500 square foot, single-story, no basement, irrigation well barn. And 4, 2 500 square foot, single-story, no basement, comfort stations located on the golf course are necessary to the 118 home residential subdivision located on 591 acres. That was included, nothing else. I mean, approved.
I mean, I can cite that language from the ZBA decision as part of the comments as well, so that the planning board has an understanding of what your concerns are centering on in terms of
Yeah.
this project.
You know, because it is so environmentally sensitive that with the right planning, I think that that could be structured, that it's still going to have an adverse effect, you know, on drinking and surfing waters or groundwaters and surface waters, but we can minimize it. This other project scares me. I mean, you just went over those numbers and I stopped adding them up. This has gotten, I think, even more monumental than the original PDD with everything that has been added. And, you know, as we've said, you know, all your pollinators that you need for your farmlands, you know, won't survive any of that up there anyway. You know, so if we could, you know, somehow incorporate that, and we feel, you know, I feel very strongly that both the site and the subdivision should not be done in piecemeal, but should be looked at, that review should be done together. So you see the whole effect, and they have not done that at all.
So just as I understand, just so I understand, so the hearing that was held was just on the subdivision, and it was not on the site plan as well?
No, the hearing that was held,
wasn't
I
a
think, was
joint
on-
hearing?
It was on the whole project.
Oh, okay.
The whole thing. And they wanted to close the hearing, and they wanted to deem that it was complete. And they had many, many people come out and say, this is not complete. There's a lot of information that's missing. They wanted a secret review. They wanted them not to do it as two separate things, and they wanted to know how all these amenities, how they somehow managed to get into this residential subdivision. You don't even have enough people living there that could use it. There's also a restaurant, an underground parking lot. How this all got in there. And it just seemed to be very, very hazy, and somehow it went along the way. And we have a board here that we see it, we think it's all approved, and everybody thinks it's approved, and they vote on it, and then nobody knows that, guess what? It never was approved.
Yeah.
So I know that's not your area, you know, and you've done exactly what you were supposed to do. And as Harry said, you did a very good job. You know, I just want to bring up something that they realize. It's not just, you know, what did the article in the paper a couple of weeks ago? You know, the thing about the consulting firm that was in the contract? You know, and let's just see what the opposition is and paint them as NIMBYs and squash their, you know, their voice. I don't want to be part of that, because people are going to look at the staff and what decisions we've made and what we allowed to go through. You know, that falls on us here. And I don't want to be part of anything like that.
So moving forward, Marty, you've heard the comments, and I think you grasp the things that should be changed. Would you have time to do that in the next few days?
Yes.
And would you be able to send Ann that report, that modified report,
Yes.
so that you can just verify that everything you've been saying is included, or at least
Okay,
the
and then he
bulk
can
of it?
send it to
Yeah,
all of you.
Yeah.
So I will try and get that to you by the close of business on Friday. I'll email it
Thank
to
you.
you.
And then let's approve sending that report now,
Okay.
because we're not going to meet between now and next week. And then if there's a time to give another report at another time, we'll do it then.
Okay.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board?
As
With
discussed.
the amendments discussed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Yes, thank you, Marty.
Oh, yes. Production Holdings LLC.
This is a pending subdivision in the pre-application stage for our two developed properties at Station Road in the hamlet of West Hampton. There are two brief comments. The first indicates that the tract for which two-lot residential subdivision approval is being sought is located south of the Long Island Railroad and within the Beaver Lake watershed, but landward of the town's priority water quality protection zone. Second, as the subdivision application has been filed in order to legalize the subdivision which occurred by deed in 1987 and the affected parcels are already improved, the Conservation Board has no objections to the proposed subdivision.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Noyak Northview LLC.
This is a pending new residential subdivision application for a large tract in the hamlet of Noyak, close to the golf course. There are several recommended comments. The first is that the vacant tract for which four-lot residential subdivision approval is being sought is located within the town's Aquifer Protection Overlay District and is adjacent to the Pomonok Path. Parcel is heavily wooded and contains rolling knob and kettle. Topography of the tract also contains an existing unnamed trail which connects to the Pomonok Path at the southerly end of the lot. Two, town records note that the property is encumbered by a term conservation easement for tax abatement purposes which has expired. Additionally, the town's assessor's office has indicated that the applicant is currently receiving a tax abatement due to the existence of a perpetual easement. However, the town does not have recorded copies of either the term or perpetual easement, nor are such documents accessible through the Suffolk County Clerk's Records portal. Consequently, the applicant needs to submit a title report which identifies any existing recorded easements in order to determine whether or not the subdivision of the parcel and subsequent residential development can be permitted. Thirdly, in the event that the subdivision application is allowed to proceed, the applicant needs to provide an updated survey for the parcel. And then I referenced the various drawings which have been submitted, which indicate that such plans have been provided without the benefit of an up-to-date and accurate survey. Therefore, the envelopes as shown cannot be verified by regulatory agencies. An updated survey is required and the plan should be reviewed by a licensed surveyor and the town of Southampton planning department. So the advisory comments support the need for an updated survey upon which the yield and subdivision maps may need to be revised to reflect the information provided by the survey and to provide dimensions of the proposed lot. So essentially what was submitted as part of the subdivision application is just concept drawings which were not based on a legal survey. So the comment is being made that a legal survey is needed. 4, both the revised yield map and cluster subdivision map need to be printed at a 1-inch to 40-foot scale in order to facilitate review. 5, the tract contains steep slopes in excess of 15%. Slope analysis map needs to be provided. Upon receipt of such map, the yield map and subdivision map need to be revised to exclude the areas of steep slopes from allowable yield, and to preserve the steep slopes through inclusion within the open space parcel by establishment of slope easements. 6, in order to prevent fragmentation of open space, the planned residential lots need to be reduced in size and/or shifted south so that the northerly lot line of proposed Lot 1 does not extend further north than the curve of the North View Hills Court right-of-way. Reducing lot size and/or shifting the lots in a southerly direction will build upon town-owned open space and associated flagpole to the east. 7, as the tract is situated within the Aquifer Protection Overlay District, subdivision map needs to note the maximum allowable clearing on all proposed lots pursuant to Section 330-67A, which of course is protection of natural vegetation of the town code. 8, in order to protect the wooded and scenic nature of Northview Hills Court, consideration needs to be given to establishment common access easements between proposed lots 1 and 2, as well as between lots 3 and 4. And lastly, as noted above, the tract contains an existing named trail and is adjacent to the Palmanock Path. The applicant is proposing to reconfigure the existing trail in order to connect to the Palmanock Path in a more northerly location, thereby eliminating those portions of the trail on the proposed residential lots. Conservation Board supports the proposed trail relocation.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? For the ZBA, SGM Excavating LLC.
This is an application for property that's located on North McGee Street in the Hamlet of Tuckahoe. The recommended comments are as follows. 1, the unauthorized office trailer and soil storage bins, which front yard variances are being sought, are located outside of the town's wetland permitting jurisdiction pursuant to Chapter 325. 2, although a wetlands permit is not required to legalize the office trailer and soil storage bins, the applicant needs to obtain site plan approval for these structures. Conservation Board recommends that the Zoning Board of Appeals postpone any decision on the application until the Planning Board has reviewed the required site plan application. And thirdly, the unsigned survey is prepared by Stephen Barilski, dated January 24, 2017, indicates that there is a storage bin which encroaches on town-owned property. Conservation Board recommends that the ZBA require removal or relocation of substructure, followed by restoration of the disturbed areas by allowance for natural vegetative succession and recovery.
Motion to send comments to the ZBA?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The Paul's Lane Trust.
This pending variance application relates to residentially developed property in the Hamlet of Watermill. The comments are as follows. 1, the subject premises for which side yard accessory structure setback variances are being sought contains town and state regulated freshwater wetlands which connect Kellis Pond to Mecox Bay. 2nd, on March 7, 2022, the chief environmental analyst issued administrative wetland permit number WAP 22019 for construction of a tennis court and reconfiguration of retaining walls. Such permit was conditioned upon the submission of revised surveys calling for removal of unauthorized deer fences. Thirdly, the survey is prepared by Lester Holden, dated January 10, 2017, with latest revision date of August 12, 2022, which was submitted to the Zoning Board of Appeals, depicts a reconfigured tennis court. As such, the applicant needs to submit a wetland permit modification application in order to obtain the necessary authorization for the intended court modifications. And then, as is customary, the last comment simply indicates that this board has not looked at the separate variance issue with standards as set forth in the town building and zoning code.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? For the Board of Trustees, 34 Maple Lane LLC.
This is an application to construct a catwalk and dock on residentially developed waterfront property. The first comment indicates that the subject premises fronts on Noyak Creek, contains extensive town and state regulated wetlands. Second comment indicates that while the planned catwalk and dock will be constructed with untreated wood and light penetrable decking materials consistent with Conservation Board policies, the board recommends relocating the proposed catwalk and dock to the northerly portion of the parcel parallel with Maple Lane. Thirdly, construction of the catwalk and dock parallel to Maple Lane will require the least amount of clearing and disturbance to wetlands or wetland buffers, as there is an extensive area along immediately landward of the wetlands in this alternative location. Moreover, based upon the soundings on the plan, construction of the catwalk and dock in the recommended location would reduce the overall needed length to reach navigable waters.
Motion to send those comments to the Board of Trustees.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The administrative wetland permits are in your packets. Resolution of conditional approval, A021036, Carl C. Jensen, trustee. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Elizabeth E. Jensen Revocable Trust and Jensen Marine, Inc. for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A021066, Nasim Bahar and Jamie Bahar, the applicant, request postponement to September 28th.
Motion to postpone September 28th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A021100, Michael Titlebaum and Michelle Titlebaum. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Michael Titlebaum and Michelle Titlebaum for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A022024, Fred J. Turpin Jr. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Fred J. Turpin Jr. for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A022033, James DePiro and Maria DePiro. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to James DePiro and Maria DePiro for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Preliminary review seeking determination, A021016, 2 Robbins Lane LLC.
Good evening again, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. The 2 Robbins Lane LLC application relates to existing developed property in the hamlet of North Sea. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing residence and accessory improvements and to construct a new dwelling and accessory amenities further back on the property. An IAOWTS would be installed as part of the project plans. The applicant is proposing a buffer 75 feet in width or greater, which is consistent with the standards for permit issuance. The portion of the project the setback would be just shy of 100 feet, but that lesser setback would be offset by the larger buffer. The applicant has agreed to covenant and the buffer and wetlands and restore the disturbed portions of the buffer as well. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A021061, Tony Lipari, and the applicant requests postponement till September 28th.
Motion to postpone September 28th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A021074, Jamie and Jeremy Bennett.
This application relates to an existing residentially developed property on South Road in the hamlet of West Hampton. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated September 8, 2022. The applicant was issued a stop work order and notice of violation for commencing significant work on the structure without requisite wetland and building permits. The existing residence being renovated and expanded. There's a detached garage which would be converted to a pool cabana. Swimming pool is proposed. A new IAOWTS. The applicant has agreed to establish a compliant covenanted wetland preservation and to establish and restore, maximize the naturally vegetated wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, I'm recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing?
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A021081, 658 Flying Point LLC.
This application relates to an existing residentially developed property that has frontage on Mecox Bay. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated September 7, 2022. Formerly, this board had allowed for certain accessory improvements on the property, conditioned upon establishment of a covenanted wetland preservation area and maximized covenanted naturally vegetated wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer. The applicant has decided to seek approval to demolish the existing residence and construct a new residence and pool and patio area that is generally consistent with the confines of the previous footprint that was authorized by this board. There are some minor revisions that are needed with regards to the buffer restoration plan, which the applicant is willing to abide by. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing?
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A021098, Attilio Soma and Mary Beth Soma.
This application relates to a property that takes access off Red Creek Road in Hampton Bays and is adjacent to town-regulated freshwater wetlands. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated August 31st, 2022. The property is mostly forested. The application has been made in order to build a single-family residence on the property with attached garage, various deck, porch, and balcony areas, swimming pool, driveway, shed, and IAOWTS would be installed, as well as other utilities. This is a project for which I've worked closely with the applicant and completing the final design plans in a manner to minimize adverse environmental impacts. The applicant has agreed fully to the recommended covenanted naturally vegetated wetland buffer, as well as other mitigative measures on the site. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, I'm recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing?
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A022006, Peter Cody. The applicant requests postponement till September 28th.
Motion postponed to September 28th?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? A022028, Denise Sokolich.
This application relates to an existing developed property on Cold Spring Point Road in the hamlet of Tuckahoe. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated September 6, 2022. The applicant is seeking to redevelop the property, to demolish the existing home and build a much larger home within very close proximity to wetlands. There's an accessory building that the applicant would like to convert to a garage with an addition. Although buffers are being proposed, they, based on our site assessment, were minimal and needed to be expanded upon in order to offset wetland impacts. We did forward a plan for redesign of the project that would consolidate the square footage by calling for an entire two-story structure rather than a partial one-story structure. It also shifts the development significantly further back on the property, and the project plans would be conditioned upon preservation of about 50% of the property and restoration within disturbed portions of the required covenanted buffer. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, I'm recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing?
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 0220633, Aaron Finkel and Rosa Alejos.
This application relates to an existing developed property that contains wetlands associated with Brushy Neck Creek in the hamlet of West Hampton. There is a preliminary advisory report on record dated September 9, 2022. Former owners of this property had recently been before this board in order to get authorization to make some minor accessory improvements on the lot. That permit was conditioned upon the establishment of a covenanted wetland preservation and a sizable covenanted naturally vegetated wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer. The new owners have put this application forward because they want to make some minor additions to the habitable space of the property. They want to expand a second story deck, looking to upgrade the sanitary system by installing an IAOWTS, which will necessitate reconfiguration of the existing septic system. While because of the elevation separation between the residents and the affected wetlands, the existing buffer is sufficient in order to offset impacts associated with this project. However, I've asked for a portion of the buffer to be reclaimed by removal of tiered wood tie and piling planting beds, as well as upon removal of deteriorated at-grade wood steps. The applicant has fully agreed to those mitigative measures, as well as to incorporate the needed dry wells for stormwater runoff, and to change the driveway from an asphalt driveway to a pervious driveway. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, I'm recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing?
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution issue modified conditional approval, A 020070, Peter Castro and Joanne DeMaria.
This is an application that this board is most familiar with, as a public hearing was held with regards to the requested modified conditional approval. This is the property that has a history of this board approving a pool at sufficient setbacks back from the wetlands, conditioned upon relocation of a shed and establishment of a buffer. The applicant had come back to this board to seek to legalize the shed in its current non-conforming location and to abandon the plans for construction of a pool on the property. The board had acted on a conditional approval that would allow for retention in the shed in the current location. The applicant has subsequently changed their mind and has agreed to remove the shed that was installed close to the bulkhead, put it in a conforming location, 50 feet or greater land with the bulkhead. They have also decided to dedicate the entire lowland of this property, inclusive of the trustees buffer, as a naturally covenanted, naturally vegetated wetland, non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer to be planted in beach grass. So essentially, they have decided to come back to this board to come forward with a plan that was consistent with the original plan that was approved by this board several years ago, that allowed for a pool conditioned upon relocation of the shed and establishment of the buffer. So this is a plan which will be most beneficial in protecting surface water quality and protecting the adjacent wetlands. So there is a resolution before you to approve the necessary modified conditional approval to allow this modified project plan to go forward.
Motion to issue the modification.
Second.
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Peter Castro and Joanne De Maria as joint tenants with rights of survivorship for the proposed project on the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? CB 21006, Richard Hayman and Elise Hayman.
This permit modification application relates to an existing residentially developed property that benefits from an existing pool and slate patio and has an existing covenanted buffer that this board had previously required as a condition of a former wetland permit. The applicant is looking to expand the slate pool patio area at less than the required setbacks on the property. In order to mitigate the impacts, the applicant has agreed to remove an equal amount of square footage of impervious areas on the property. In visiting the property, I found that as requested by this board, the applicant had installed wrought iron fence, landward of the previously required, and existing covenanted buffer. And the fence location is a little bit landward of the limit of the buffer this board had required, but the in-between area is fully naturally vegetated. So as mitigation for the expansion of the slate pool patio area, I have asked that they slightly refine and expand the buffer so it comes right up to the existing wrought iron fence, which provides a good separation between the buffer and the residentially improved areas. It's a great corridor for wildlife. I observed a lot of wildlife when it was out there. So it's a minimal change to the buffer, but it will, as far as expansion, but it will offset the impacts related to this project. So there is a resolution before you to act on a modified permit in order to allow them to build some additional slate pool patio area. It would be built within an existing lawn area.
Motion to issue the modification.
Second.
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Richard Hayman and Elise Hayman for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth herein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution to withdraw permit application A021003 Joshua Field and Paula Field.
Let me ask a question. Are there any violations or situations that need to be remedied as part of this?
Morty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. I did meet with the landowner regarding that matter. It was yesterday or today. There has been concern regarding what I view as excessive mowing on the property, particularly the mowing that has been encroaching within a high marsh on the property. There also is a wire fence line that extends adjacent to and into the wetlands that, based on my review of the records, is unpermitted and is presenting some issues in terms of wildlife movement and passage through the seaward portions of the property. The applicant has agreed to stop mowing the area of concern and also to take up the wire fence, so there will no longer be a wire fence separating this property with the wetlands on the abutting property. I advised the applicant that his conditional approval is good for 3 years, and so if he wants to put the project on hold and wait some time before making a final decision, he can, but he said that the cost of the project was just too high, and he has made a final decision to not go ahead with the project plan. So we did submit a letter withdrawing the application.
I was just concerned that withdrawing the application makes them think that they don't have to take out anything that's unapproved, and as long as you've addressed that.
No, and I did indicate that I will be back to his property. We just also approved the redevelopment plan, which was very similar to his plan on the adjacent property. So I will be back there to look at it, and he told me that he will advise me when those actions have been taken,
So you
that
can
I
follow up.
can revisit his property and follow up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to withdraw motion to accept the withdrawal of the permit application without prejudice.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby accepts the withdrawal without prejudice of wetland permit application number A021003. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all.